I think film should be seductive and involving and intriguing.
I think that massive doses of videodrome signal will ultimately create a new outgrowth of the human brain, which will produce and control hallucination to the point that it will change human reality.
And so it is as much a surprise to me as maybe to other people that some of my films are considered to be very assaultive and very confrontational.
After all, there is nothing real outside our perception of reality, is there? You can see that, can't you?
My imagery is really very much like the use of metaphor in literature. It's a way of comparing things and suggesting possibilities that might not otherwise have been imagined.
What Cronenberg does, and what George Romero in his best films does, is he creates a world which starts off, you think you know that world because you've seen a horror film before, but their genius is to create a new world that you haven't seen before. And that's like a dream, because in a dream you can go into a place that you think is familiar, and all of a sudden
it's one thing to have someone pushed off a subway platform and you can imagine what would happen. You don't have to show that.
Videodrome is death.
But when you are creating absolutely new, unimagined imagery, you have to show it. There is really no other choice. It's just, it's really, it's a very functional thing.
you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the most surprising thing, is you don't know how it's going to end. And that's very rare, because normally films are predictable and you do know how they're going to end. And so it's very surprising. And then it becomes like a dream too, because you never know how your dreams are going to turn out.
Shh. Attaboy. Attaboy. Well, when I began to think about making a movie, I had done underground films, and now I was doing a movie that would have an audience that was eating popcorn. That was the difference. It was a completely natural thing for me to go to a kind of sci-fi horror form.
Hobbes believed that man is an animal that thinks too much. You know, too much brain and not enough guts. So what he came up with to help our guts along was a parasite that's, a combination of aphrodisiac and venereal disease that will hopefully turn the world into one beautiful, mindless orgy.
Well, I think it sounds a little crazy to me.
Yeah.
It seems like a brilliant career strategy in retrospect, because it was one of the few places that you could make a low-budget film and have it be successful and have it be noticed. All the other genres were sort of taken by Hollywood. At that time, no Hollywood studio would make a horror film. Maybe The Omen with Gregory Peck, you know, maybe. But something like Shivers, never.
When I was growing up, the horror films that I was allowed to see, and then the ones that we sneaked off to see, always stopped short of the punchline, if you will.
Let it go. Take care of the other one.
Most horror films at the time were basically costume dramas. If you didn't have a vampire, you certainly had capes. You know, it was a Roger Corman kind of thing. And you had castles if you could afford them. But for me, it was never questioned. It was going to be modern. It was going to be a contemporary thing.
It's really part of the job of the genre to rattle your cage and create an environment that is not the environment that you're in. It's not the world. It's meant to shake that world up, particularly if you're using it as some sort of a form of criticism of the way things are.
What are they doing? Why did they come here?
Some kind of instinct, memory of what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
The biggest problem that I've always had with horror is that things are restored to normality in the end, whereas the whole genre is meant to just bring down reality or destroy it.
Making a film like Shivers at the time that I did in Canada caused me great difficulties because we were very much influenced by the National Film Board and John Grierson style of filmmaking, which was basically documentary. People who worked the plains, fishermen in Nova Scotia, that was real filmmaking. To do a sort of fantasy, horror, science fiction thing was not even considered.
There was just something about Shivers that was kind of, oh, I don't like it, you know, and hey, get it away, you know, and so, and in a sense that means the film's working. Shivers wasn't repulsive, but it was disturbing. If a film can not just like make you gag, but make you sort of feel disturbed and uneasy and come out of the cinema feeling kind of weird, you know, that's actually quite an achievement.
I wanted to have a kind of a claustrophobic, trapped feel, and there was something about a high-rise apartment building in which little dramas were unfolding in each apartment.
Let's kiss, kiss, make up, kiss.
I wanted to suggest that the proliferation of this strange disease was on one strange level liberating. And that gives the film, I think, its very disconcerting tone, the fact that it's not all just straightforward, let's kill the scary beast and then we'll be okay.
You're here.
The image of the parasites living inside the human body, controlling that person, can suggest many things, of course, from just the Freudian unconscious to, let's say, the embodiment of evil.
David's films are a little more directly concerned about, you know, the beast within, I think, than the zombie films were, because I think the zombie films are more about, you know, society and people not communicating and so forth, less Jekyll and Hyde.
Roger, I had a very disturbing dream last night. In this dream, I found myself making love to a strange man. Only I'm having trouble, you see, because he's old and dying.
For me, the human body is the first fact of human existence. I do feel that the death is the end, there is no afterlife, and that therefore the existence of the body is the existence of the individual. And therefore the focus of the films on the body as a way of exploring the various aspects of life as a human, it seems obvious.
He tells me that even old flesh is erotic flesh. That disease is the love of two alien kinds of creatures for each other. That even dying is an act of eroticism.
Perhaps there's, you know, the collective subconscious. I mean, the fact that we were doing those things at the same time. Other filmmakers were doing the same thing, too, that just never got the notoriety. And, you know, it sort of became a genre.
Videodrome, like my other films, began with a kind of crystal. A film can begin in any way. It can begin with a character or a plot device or a narrative strain. It can begin with a phrase of music, or it can begin with an image. Videodrome began really with the idea of a man watching a program that came to him on television that was a very strange, extreme program which he became obsessed with and which he could not discover the source of.
Okay, here we go.
For me, the process of making the film was to unfold the meaning of why I was kind of intrigued by that concept. And even as Shivers began with the image of a parasite emerging from a mouth, while someone was sleeping. Videodrome began with this strange television program that was very intriguing and disturbing at the same time. I wanted to have a lead character who was a bit of a sleazy guy, not a bad guy, but a kind of morally ambivalent man.
It's a real sicko.
Brilliant.
For perverts only.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, look, there's almost no production costs. You can't take your eyes off it. It's incredibly realistic. Where do they get actors who can do this?
Oh, help me. I think he wants it.
It's occurred to me in watching Hollywood films in particular that characters in the films take various stances just as a plot point, that they are very moral or ethical, or someone is and someone isn't, and it's really meant to make the narrative work, but that there is in fact no one making the film who really believes or cares about what these characters care about. It's just another filmmaking device. I wanted to be more realistic than that in Videodrome and not have any characters who very righteously make little speeches about morals and ethics.
Your television station offers its viewers everything from softcore pornography to hardcore violence. Why?
Well, it's a matter of economics, Rena. We're small. In order to survive, we have to give people something they can't get anywhere else.
As I got into it further, I developed a character named Brian Oblivion, who was modeled after Marshall McLuhan, the sort of media prophet who lived in Toronto and who had a great influence on the 60s and early 70s.
The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena, the Videodrome. The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye.
It is, I suppose, a comment on media, the human body, and the concept of reality as being something that is a concept of will rather than some absolute that's given to us.
Whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television. Max, I'm so glad you came to me.
I wanted to see what happens to this character and let him float, let him be realistic and as complex and subtle as most people really are. If this is the way that this is flowing with this character, let's see where it leads. Let's see what it leads to. And it leads to a very strange place indeed.
You're ready for something new. That's terrific. What do you want from me?
This has disconcerted a lot of people, and in fact with my film Crash, it's also very evident that the lack of a moral standpoint is very disturbing to some people.
Is there something here that interests you?
This interests me.
I'm saying that there is no morality or ethics in the universe other than what we create. There are no absolutes that come from outer space or from God or religion or whatever, that in fact we have to create them, and therefore they are very changeable and very malleable.
What's this? Videodrome?
Torture, murder.
Sounds great.
Ain't exactly sex.
Says who?
Videodrome was beginning to play with those concepts in a way that led eventually to what I do in Crash.
Oh, shit.
Part of the process is to allow yourself to be open, to censor nothing in yourself. Any artist worth his salt has his radar very, very finely honed to what's in the stratosphere. And in Videodrome, I think I did anticipate a few things that are now fairly well understood and common, but at the time were really not. Almost any film will be seen many more times by anybody on video or Laserdisc than we'll see it in the cinema. The video phenomenon has freed imagery.
God, I can't believe it.
I'll turn it off.
No, it's okay. I can take it.
It will be impossible to police, and I frankly think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it turns me on.
The internet, of course, has just intensified that phenomenon, and the stakes are even higher because it's so completely, instantly international. International law is in a complete frenzy trying to figure out what to do with the internet. A book that's banned in France is fed into a scanner in a cyber cafe in Belgium and is instantly accessible in France. It's not published. It's not in France. Is it illegal? Is it not illegal? How can you stop it? It's quite terrifying to people who must have control.
You watched the cassette?
Yeah.
And?
Changed my life.
I'm not surprised. It's dangerous, you know.
But once again, I think it's much better for everyone to know what's really out there. It's never helped to pretend that things aren't there and then allow them to get so strong that they can bite you.
What kind of teeth do you think it has?
It triggered off a series of hallucinations. I woke up with a headache.
First time ever.
No, I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What?
Since I first saw Videodrome.
I'm completely opposed to censorship of any kind when it comes to adults censoring adults. I do believe in, let's say, a classification system for cinema, possibly even for video, because I do think that a child at a certain stage of development can be overwhelmed by imagery that he's not ready for, and so on. That's very conventional of me.
I mean, I actually am worried about images that I put out now. I used to not care. I mean, maybe it's because I have children of my own now. But it does make you worry when you see behavior on the streets. I don't think that's a reason to restrict the work at all. I think there needs to be a reasonable way of distributing the work. I mean, I think there does have to be some responsibility.
Well, if someone were to call and say, you're irresponsible for making this film and the BBC is irresponsible for showing them, and I would say, well, then you're irresponsible for watching them. All you have to do is switch it off. I mean, you don't have to watch it.
You know, as a young man, you know, I was very against censorship, you know, in all its forms, you know, and I think, but recently, I rented an American movie called Seven, you know, a mainstream American movie in the, of the Silence of the Lambs type of thriller. It's really disgusting. You know, it's absolutely disgusting. It's horrible. I mean, it's not entertaining. It's perverse in a nasty, in a kind of in a way that sort of, I hate to sound like Mary Whitehouse, you know, but it kind of cheapens the viewer. It's brutalizing.
I mean, my hope is that fantasy doesn't do that. You know, maybe Quentin Tarantino does that more than a zombie would, or that, you know, than I would, or Cronenberg, or one of them. But, you know, I can't even say that. How can you say it? It's unarguable.
The funny thing is that a film like Seven will play in the cinema, whereas what is allegedly hardcore pornography, i.e. where you see a guy with a boner and they have sex with a woman who has sex organs and things like that, that's far more offensive in the end to the censorious.
Most censors really don't look at context because it's too complex, it's too open to interpretation, so there are just certain images that are proscribed, and we see that in the militant wings of many people's politics, whether it's feminist or left-wing or whatever.
You know, most boards of censorship or most rating panels become very political, and, you know, it's like everything else. It's very hard to find a kind of a common ground.
There's also a kind of sense of being image police, that if you destroy the image, you will destroy the thing itself.
What are you waiting for, lover? Let's perform. Let's open those neural floodgates.
Certain images are proscribed. You must not see them because the images themselves are the actions. And that confusion is psychosis. I mean, medically speaking, if you cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality, you're a psychotic. And that puts many of the censors in that category. It's quite a strange phenomenon. The idea that people will do copycat things and so on completely spontaneously, that they wouldn't have done anything bad until they saw this movie, is a joke. It's a complete inability to read the complexity of human psychology. And of course, if you're a filmmaker and you're dealing with actors and characters, the complexity of human psychology is what you work with all the time. And it is very difficult stuff indeed.